All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Michael and Israel here for another Tech Tuesday. Didn't get a ton of questions last week, so maybe you got them this week. So drop them in there in the comments. I pulled a few good questions. Um, I don't really know how you judge a good question versus a bad question. Just questions.
Yeah.
So I got a few questions. If you guys don't have anything, but I do want to say, make sure if you're watching on a shared post, if we share it into a group, if you comment on the shared post, we can't see it live. You got to actually click into our page and post it there, if that makes sense. If not, I'll probably just see it later. So
Push a bunch of buttons, it may work.
yeah, yeah.
Give it a shot.
But if nothing else, just say hey. So
Somebody say hey, so we know.
yeah,
You can
yeah.
hear
Let
us.
us let us know that this thing is working.
Is this thing on?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hire a Verizon guy to.
T-Mobile now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I will say, guys, for the Avid folks, the Avid posted a video of their new tunnel hole 21 FS. Pretty nice looking hole shot.
Yeah.
Gets basically right up on plane. So shared that over on Bucks Island, but go check that out if you're into that. That's the bay boat. Um, I'm curious. I saw some questions in there about the performance. How much does the tunnel hole, detract from the overall performance? It's basically the same 21 FS that they've been building. So I'm interested to see how, before somebody asks us, we haven't seen one yet. So we can't answer that. We are waiting on Avid to see what they have to say about it. But I think they built that a lot for their guys getting down in the marshes to get
and
really shallow.
we don't really know when we're going to see one either. So
Yeah.
if that's the question, I hate to take it away from. Go ahead and ask it, but we don't know.
All right. Guys, really, at least say hello and let us know that this thing's working. Otherwise, I'm gonna be I'm gonna have to troubleshoot a bunch of gear and figure out what's going on. But I wanted to start out. If you haven't seen a post from yesterday, we've got another Yamaha Master Tech.
Yes.
So congrats to Derek. He, he's been here a while,
Yes.
longer than I have. I know. So I just kind of wanted to. I mean, you hear things like certified techs and all that kind of stuff thrown around, master tech. That sounds important.
It is.
So I just kind of, we've talked a little bit about. So you've been a master tech now for it's going on 2 or 3 years.
Probably more than probably 5 or 6.
You go back. Okay, so if you could just kind of explain, what does that mean with the Yamaha Master Tech? What is that qualification?
So the way Yamaha does their schooling is this. They have different classes. So you have like the general outboard classes, and so once you take that class, you're certified to work on outboards for the most part. And then if you take their drivetrain class, you're certified to work on their drivetrains, power trim and tilt. Then they have specialized classes for just electrical, diagnosing electrical stuff. And they have classes for some of the new digital throttle and shift stuff.
Okay.
And so to be a master tech, you've got to you have to take all those classes before you can take the master tech test. And so the master tech test is all of that information kind of jumbled up into a class and then a test at the end of that class. So you have to retain all those other classes. So technically, if somebody's smart enough and they're able, they can just take all the classes. And it probably if you did it all at one time, it'd be probably 7-8 weeks worth of classes.
Okay.
And then you can take the test. More than likely, though, part of the master tech, being a master tech, is having the experience. So So what they'll do at the end of that class is you'll take a written test, about 50 questions,
Okay.
and then you have to take a practical test where you have to go through and fix motors. You've got to they'll give you part and tell if it's bad, and if it's bad, tell us why it's bad. If it's good, tell us why it's good.
So this is not just like, hey, just change the lower unit.
And then they got a stopwatch. They say go, and you got 30 minutes on each one. You got you got 4 practical, stations, and
Okay.
then you have 30 minutes per to get them right. And if you don't pass at least 3 of them, then you fail. You have to do it again some other time. So it's a pretty stressful test, and the way they do the timing and stuff, it makes it a little bit harder, but it keeps you on your toes. If you're a really good test taker, it's a little bit easier for people. But if you get nervous, it makes it a little bit harder. So.
But they get, I mean, they get tricky on that practical, right?
They
I think
do.
I remember you
They do.
talking
So
some about
a lot of things, and I talk to guys at school now, and they're like, "Well, what did you do to pass the test?" I was like, "I just, you know, you've got to be detailed."
Gotcha.
And that's what I tell them is like, go in, take it. Don't be scared to take it, because even if you fail, you get the experience.
Right.
And so the hardest thing you can get the answer right, but it's kind of like an algebra problem at school. You had those guys or gals that could look at a problem and say, "Oh, that's n over 27 RP." Well, like, what? Okay. And then the teacher would mark it wrong because they didn't show their work.
Gotcha.
Okay, so if you take a Master Tech test at Yamaha, you got to tell them what color the wire is, how many ohms, volts, all this information on that. Otherwise, they're not going to pass you. So they want that detail. They don't want to know that you took this control box and plugged it in and it started working, so its control box is bad. They want to know why it's bad.
So correct me if I'm wrong. The kind of the concept of that Master Tech is so that if somebody, so you got a certified mechanic that's trying to figure something out and can't get an answer.
Yeah.
Maybe they call back to Yamaha. They're looking for help.
Yes.
Then you've got these Master Techs that are out there that they can go, hey, why don't you try that guy before?
And that's exactly what it is. And we're in a network. So if you have a Master Tech at your dealership, they post you on Yamaha's website. Whereas if you don't, you're not on there. So, and that directs people. A lot of people actually look for that before they take their boat somewhere.
Gotcha.
And it helps the RTAs, which are like a regional tech that comes by. If you're having an issue you can't fix, they'll send a guy out and help you with it.
Okay.
And so once you have a Master Tech at your dealership, they kind of consider you their RTA for that dealership. So they expect you to be able to fix stuff without sending their guy out there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so it's a win-win for Yamaha, and it's a good partnership there. So I'm gonna ask the question for the Mercury guys. What is there a comparable
there is
setup with them?
There is, but they used to actually do it sort of like Yamaha. They would do the written test and then a practical test, but they just do a written test now. It's just a whole bunch of questions, but I think it's 100 questions. You can't use a book, but they ask the question where they're actually asking like 2 to 3 questions at one time, because they'll give you a scenario and then they'll say Tech A says do this, Tech B says do this. And then is Tech A right or is Tech B right? Is Tech A and B right, or is Tech A and B wrong? So, and it, sometimes both of them are right, and then sometimes one of them's right, and sometimes both of them's wrong. So you have to be able to read through the lines on their test. But Mercury has a few more. They have a few more obstacles you have to get past to be able to take the Master Tech test. So you have to have all the classes, and then after you're certified, they call it just generally certified, you have to wait 4 years before you can take the Master Tech. Gotcha. And then you have to make sure you have all the special tools you're supposed to have.
Okay.
And then the RTA for the area has to sign off on you taking it.
Okay.
So they got a few more steps to take to do it, but I've never taken that test, but because I'm focusing on other things right now. So
gotcha.
I'll let them figure that out.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, Ricky, thank you. Nice compliment for the service department. We have yet another Master Tech.
Which also takes pressure off me a little bit too. I thought, well, he's a Master Tech, let me do that.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, speaking of that, here's one. Since you guys aren't, again, if you got questions, throw them in the comments. Here's one I'm gonna throw up that I saw in the uh, Yamaha owners group. Speaking of kit, uh, is this what you guys are using for four-stroke? Will it read my 2011 F-150s?
2011? Probably not.
I don't know if that's enough info.
That's a
on there.
That's a 1.33 software. We're up in the, I believe I think we're at 4.1 now. So it may, if your computer's old enough, it may read it. That's our old software we used to use on like Windows. What was the last one before 10, 7, 6, 5,
I don't know.
4,
I hate
3?
Windows. So
One of those old
Yeah.
Windows.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
Windows NT. I'm a
whatever
I go
Windows
back
98 was based off of Vista. Yeah, I think it was Vista. So, yeah, a lot of the computers won't. I still have that software. I got it on an old computer because sometimes you get older stuff and another guy's using your computer and you can read it off there. But I think somewhere in when the SHO motors came out is when they started a new software. So 2010, if they based the 150 software off of that software, then that would not read. But if they're still using the older software for the F-150, it may read it, but it may only read parts, and there may be some things you can't test with. So,
all right, Shane,
you're just gonna have to come see me, buddy.
what's going on? What did you?
He's having troll motor problems.
Uh-oh. I did what you said to do yesterday, and still not a 36-volt reading.
Yeah.
It's an Ultrex.
No, it's a Garmin.
Oh yeah, that's right. You did the full Garmin build out, didn't you, Shane? I knew the graphs. Well, is it working on the 24-volt setting?
I don't think it's working at all.
Oh,
Yep, he said yeah. So that's interesting.
wait. Well, is that a yep to?
Oh,
Well, it depends on how delayed we are. Is that a yep to the Garmin build out, or yep to it's working on 24-volt?
And don't say yep again, because then we're gonna really be confused.
Right.
Right.
Right. Roger.
Roger.
Well, okay, interesting. How's the?
The Garmin said.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What's are we getting any other feedback on the Garmin motors?
Well, I mean, I was talking to a guy probably not yesterday, but the day before he called, and I shouldn't have done it because that's probably what broke your trolling motor is me talking about it. You know, the guy was like, "Well, I haven't any luck with that Ghost, and then the Garmin and stuff, and the Ultra." I was like, "I'm not going to give you my, my full version of the Ghost, but I told him that we was having a few problems with the Ghost, but we hadn't seen a whole lot of problems with the Garmin, except for one guy had to replace the foot pedal, which I think was Shane, and so otherwise his has been doing great."
Sorry, Shane.
Sorry, it's my fault.
Well, all right. Here's one I pulled. I want to pull my lower unit to do maintenance. Does it matter? And this is off a Yamaha, and I think it was a 300. I think you posted a picture, but does it matter if it's off for a week? My boat sits in outside storage. Kind of trailer it with the lower unit off. It's first time pulling his lower unit.
I mean, it shouldn't be a problem. You know, the only thing is, the dirt divers like to get in holes and stuff, and if they clog up your drive shaft hole, it'd be a bugger to get it back in there. So just want to make sure you shine a light up inside the holes and make sure nothing got stopped up. Because I've literally done the same thing and left a lower unit off for a week waiting for one to come in, and I was trying to jam it up there, and I pulled it down, looked up, and dirt hit me in the eye. And I was like, thanks. Thanks, Jim.
All right. Well, that may be an aspect of it that he's not even thinking about when he's asking that question. But I mean, that's structurally.
Structurally, no, it shouldn't be in it. Don't crank it. You know, none of all the 4 strokes. If you pull the lower unit off and your buddy's wanting to be cute and crank your motor up, he's going to blow it up because that drive shaft turns the oil pump.
Gotcha.
So the old 2 strokes, we could crank them up and listen to them for a second. It wouldn't overheat as long as you turn them off within about 30, 40 seconds. You could do stuff like that. But the new 4 strokes, you don't do that because bad things happen.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so when my guys pull the lower unit now, I make them take the key switch out and pull the kill switch just a safety precaution.
Gotcha.
We don't want any problems.
All right. Please explain to me the difference in the variety of props. Well, that could be a whole series.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to assume asking the question maybe not the bass boat side. Are you looking for performance?
I'll give you some generals. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I'll give you two general types of props and 2 materials. All right. So we're looking at stainless steel and aluminum. Okay. That's pretty much the world we live in. Okay. And then you got the type of ears they have. Okay. I call them a mouse ear and a dog ear. Okay. A dog ear is going to be real pointy like this, and a mouse ear is going to be like this. That's the only way I know to describe it. Okay. And so the dog ears are more for performance, going fast. Okay. And the mouse ears are more for like, I want to say commercial, but it's more like, what am I trying to say? General purpose, I guess you would say. You're not really trying to get really fast, but you get more efficiency. You don't get a bunch of speed, and you get.
And typically, when you're going for speed, you're giving up acceleration basically. You're
acceleration
the whole shot.
and low speed. Like I know a lot of more these days. I'm having bass fishermen like, man, I want to run 3,500 RPMs because I'm looking for stuff. And I was like, well, do you want to run 3,500 RPMs or go fast? Because you a lot of times you got to pick one.
Gotcha.
Unless you got a really super light boat like a Bullet or an Allison, they don't do this because they're not real heavy. So, but
Eric, I see the pontoon
on a pontoon boat, which Eric says I got a pontoon with a 90. On those, most of the time you're going to run a rounded ear mouse ear prop, and there's even more varieties of that. So you've got a little bit bigger diameters that will push weight better, but you tend to have less speed and RPM with them,
right?
Because it's so big. And then you have on the newer Mercuries, you have what they call a CT prop, which is made for pontoons because the pontoons are getting a lot bigger, but the transoms are the same. So they need more prop here in the water. So they made an extended prop to make up for that. So it's not when you go in a turn, it doesn't blow out. So, and the more pitch you have on a prop, the more torque you need to push that boat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
And more horsepower. So, but typically on a pontoon like a 90, you're going to be running, anywhere from a 13 to a 15, depending on the size of the boat.
All right. And I think the other discussion with the pontoon is expectation management of playing around with props. And we get that question. I mean, most of what we sell is going to go out with an aluminum prop.
Yeah.
The durability of an aluminum prop versus, number one, a stainless is a good bit more expensive,
especially now.
So you can get into that conversation of even if you got a little bit more performance on a 90 horse. Let's say, and I don't know what size your boat is, Eric, but if you're talking, if you bought a 24-foot pontoon, big pontoon with a 90 on the back of it, are you really ever going to notice that big of a difference when you start really playing with props? Maybe on a 20-foot boat, you might start seeing when the boat's a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
You might be able to eke it out. Okay, so 20-foot boat, but still.
And there's other factors involved with that. Does your boat have the little lifting struts on the very bottom?
Yeah.
Because you'll get more performance out of a boat, even a pontoon boat with the little lifting struts on it.
Yeah. So when you talk about spending money and playing with that stuff, stainless.
Stainless is always more likely it's always going to perform a little bit better, But if you're getting shallow stuff and you hit stuff, the weakest link breaks, and that prop's pretty strong. So it's probably going to break the prop, but it's going to break other things too.
So I don't know that getting performance out of pontoons, and looking at projects. If it's a regular pontoon, if you want more performance and speed, you may actually look at some of the options with adding a center log to make it a tri-tune. And depending on, and I think from a sales perspective, what you may find is if you're really not happy with the performance of your 20-foot with a 90, you probably need to go find another boat, and roll into something that's going to be either 150, a tri-tune, or a bigger motor. Most of our pontoons, the last few years, most of them are going out with 115s. That's typically the max rating on most of your pontoons. There are certainly some that are out there that are 150s. I spent 10 years with a tri-tune, 24-foot JC tri-tune with a 90 Honda on it. I could tube and have a lot of fun. That tri-tune really makes a big difference in adding some additional speed. But of course, speed is all relative when you're talking pontoons.
Right.
And
you have to take into account like what kind of load you're putting on the boat. Yeah. If you're pulling 3 people on a tube, if you're wanting performance coming out of the hole so you can pull those tubers up or a skier, then you just go down a pitch or 2 on your prop, and that will help you get hole shot. But you got to remember, if next week you go on cruising and you get in a rainstorm, you want to go wide open, that 13 is going to hit the rev limiter, so you need to change your. You'd have to have 2 props, and change them out.
And that's, it's something I think that is talked about pretty often when we do these, and we get into conversation about props. It does come down to trial and error, and playing with a couple of different setups. But I don't know. From what I've seen, it kind of depends on really what you want to get out of a pontoon. But I don't know there's a whole lot worth playing with there, as far as props go. At most, what are you going to eke out? 2 miles an hour, 3 miles an hour, maybe
with a prop.
Certainly, if you're trying to, and even with the 90, trying to pull a skier. If you see, if you look at the ski boats, dedicated Mastercraft, ski nautiques and stuff like that, those props, they are literally designed to just accelerate as quickly as possible, and they're not designed to go fast at all. They just move a lot of water really quickly. That's the extreme. So I don't know. That's a long answer talking about 90 horse props on a pontoon, but hopefully that helps you in some way. The pontoon discussion on getting more performance out of those. The other thing, like with the brands that we sell, Crest and Bentley, the Bentleys we see run a good bit faster than the Crests. Probably, I'm guessing from some of just the way it's designed, but it's also the weight. So that weight's going to play a big.
When they put all those fancy things on there to make you feel like you're on like a yacht or something, it adds to the weight.
But I don't know. I've had that conversation, a few times with guys trying to eke out, and I think when you start really looking at the math on the money and all that kind of stuff.
Did you say eke out?
Eke out.
Is that eke out?
Like squeeze it out.
Okay, eke it out.
Yeah,
okay.
Eke it.
I don't know.
That was a remarkable term. All right, but yeah, you
Us youngins don't know that term.
Yeah, you can quickly get into a position when you're playing with a pontoon where if you really want more performance, you probably need to of course the use, like talking about buying a new boat or buying a new used boat is a whole different conversation in today's market. That's easier said than done. I don't know. I see in some of the pontoon groups people asking, like, is it worth adding the lifting strakes? And
I think it is. I'd have them on mine.
But I would say before I do all that, I'd run the numbers and see, is it worth just going ahead and finding a tri-tune with a 150 or bigger motor if I really want to go, if I really want some performance, I want to be able to pull skiers, if I want to really not have to worry about how many people, and if I want to be able to run, 35 to 48 miles an hour, depending on the brand and what size motor. If that's what you're looking for, then you got to jump into that tri-tune market and the bigger motor. Otherwise, I don't. I just enjoy the 90 and.
Put some lifting struts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could try it.
And there's
I mean,
a lot
if you can do that yourself, I guess I look at it from the I'm gonna be paying somebody to do it. So
yeah, well, we got a guy in town that does it for us if somebody really wants it. So
all right.
But
Well,
it ain't real cheap.
yeah, yeah, and that's eventually you just got to do the math, and figure out what you want to do. And I think I had one more. Nope. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's all I got. Well, I think we got two fairly lengthy conversations. I hope that helps some guys. I appreciate y'all hanging out with us and asking some questions. Let us know. Oh, there was one thing I wanted to do. Oh, questions about the gas tank in the Avid group from last week from our Tech Tuesday.
Oh yeah.
What's the latest on the? I know the Avids have had some issues with slow filling and all that kind of stuff.
Which it depends on the boat. I can give you two answers.
Can you give us both? And
I'm gonna give you the XB answer first.
Okay.
And I've seen several of the XBs that had a fitting on the very front of the tank, which is what was wrong with Shane's.
Yeah.
The vent for the tank is at the front, and when they put them in, for whatever reason his should have been aimed, horizontal, and it was aimed vertically, and it took the hose and pinched it because the hose had to come around the tank this way.
Gotcha.
And so when they screwed it in, I guess when they got it around to here, they're like, that's tight enough. Let's just put the hose on top, and it was probably okay, at first because it had some elasticity to it, and once it got warm, and sat a while, it just came down until it put a little bit of a pinch in it. And if you're filling up a gas tank, you're putting fluid in, the air's got to come out.
Right.
And so, in his case, the air wasn't coming out, and it was just spitting back.
Okay.
So, we got that straightened out, and then on the FSs, for whatever reason, they've got these little door flaps in there that keep fuel from spitting back, probably keeps you from overfilling it too.
Okay.
But it's straight down, and it should flow easily. But that little door flap doesn't like to stay open, and it does this while you're putting fuel in it. And every time it does that, it kicks the pump off. And then you start again, it'll start flowing and doing this, and it kicks the pump off.
Okay.
So sometimes we have to adjust that a little bit in a different angle, and it helps.
All right.
Well, but I've had some guys actually have to unhook their boat, lower the nose down to get the angle straight down, and it would fill up easier. But if we position that valve a different way, a lot of times it fixes it.
Okay. All right. Well, and then the last thing I see in here is how many Group 31 batteries fit inside the console on a 23 Fusion? So on those center consoles.
I'm pretty sure we put 4 in there. And then, but
do you have to stack them?
No, it's 1, 2, 3, and then a fourth one I think sideways. Because we've had some 36 volt. I think we've had some 36 volt trolling motors in there along with the cranking battery. But typically, most of them we see are using 24 volt systems and then a cranking battery. So we typically only put 3 batteries in there. But if we have to put a fourth, I think we've figured out a way to do it. I'm not 100% because I haven't been doing a lot of the rigging myself.
Yeah,
so.
You haven't rigged every single one of the Avids that have.
But most of the Avids I've seen have been 24 volt systems. So I know we're putting 3 in there. So you may be able to get a fourth one in there. But they are making really small lithium batteries that are like this. You could stack 100 in there probably. So.
Well, and I think that that center console style, it starts getting the affordability of some of these single 36 volt batteries, or fitting 2 36 volt lithiums.
Yeah, you can
gives you a ton of juice and takes up a lot less room
and weight.
But all right, I just wanted to get through those questions from last week. I think we've covered most everything. So thanks again, guys. We will see you again next week. Y'all have a great weekend.